Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. To subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com.
Welcome to another episode of the Wisdom Circle. We are excited to be here with my friend, colleague, Tony Ponturo. We are excited about our guest. We will bring him on in a short while, but first we're going to talk about a couple of topics of interest to both Tony and I, and hopefully you. And we're going to see if we're on the same side of those conversations. So, Tony, let's talk. Well, first of all, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Our friendship has survived 6 months of podcasts, so that's always good. We never had any doubt, but
No, but we have had to have a couple of come to Jesus. Like, you remember I love you and I know you love me. So, like, let's not decide. Yeah.
that's right. We've had to go into the confessional a few times, but no, it's like it's always as much as I love the summer, and we both generally live in warm climate areas. There's something about the fall and going back to school, and you know football season, World Series playoffs, NBA and NHL people starting to come into their training camps. It's sort of a fun time of the year. So I feel a little pumped up. So we'll have some fun today, I know, with our guests.
Yeah, we had a nice game last night with the New York Jets. It was good to see Aaron Rodgers make it through a whole game and had some good stats. Patriots had 93 yards in total, like not the length of a football field. And I can tell you that up here in the Northeast, it's not going to hit 70 next week. So that's the feeling of fall. Leaves are starting to move a little bit. We were in Florida last week, still hot as hell, but that goes till November 1 or so. So all good.
All good.
Happy times. So why don't you talk a little bit about this whole private equity incursion, opportunity, challenge, all the things that are going on in the financial space as it relates to pro sports. And then we can talk a little bit about going into college sports with NIL and the Vols' decision to raise ticket prices and pass it on to the fans, which just I'll try to keep my blood pressure down when we talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I have a personal sort of emotion about private equity and because 3G Capital, a lot of people always say, oh yeah, well, Anheuser-Busch InBev or InBev bought Anheuser-Busch. Yeah, they did, but it was really 3G Capital, which is a private equity company out of Brazil. They've bought since then Kraft General Foods, Tim Horton, Burger King, and now we're starting to see it come into sports. You've had people like Steve Cohen and David Tepper who, in a way, are their own private equity, but financial people with a mindset that's very much financial, right? But now you have the NFL saying, okay, we're never going to get from an individual, and you never say never, the asset value of what our teams are going to be worth today and tomorrow. So now we better bring in a collective of people called private equity. And my main concern, having seen it in real time, is if everything's driven by just dollars, then the brand enhancement, the brand development, the consumer connection can get lost. And I think InBev learned that with Anheuser-Busch. They've lost market share. We'll just leave it at that. And a lot of people were out of work, lost their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not building something for the future. It's sort of how do we get to a bottom line that we can all get richer on. And this is me talking. Other people will have different opinions. So my concern, or at least what I pose back to you, is as these financially minded people come in, which will make 5 people richer, Robert Kraft and Jerry Jones and others, as they maybe consider selling their teams as they're now well into their 80s, is that going to be good for the whole? And is that going to be good for the fan? So I'll pass it back to you on that sort of positioning.
Yeah. I don't say it every time we get together on the show, but I've lived by the rule in both sides of it: programming rights, acquisitions, sales, etc. Is if you serve the fan will serve you. They're elastic. They can go pretty far. And so there's that, right? These companies have plans to make everything bigger, which is the American way, and that's good. I understand the desire to unlock the full value of these franchises. The value is, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So you wonder, where does it stop? I agree with you. I mean, ultimately, I'd love to disagree. I like it when we kind of go back and forth, but in the end of it all, I do think, well, I kind of agree. It's okay that people are unlocking the full value of their investment. Everybody should be able to do that in America. What happens to the consumer, to me, is the most important thing. Is it, $800? I mean, I don't know. How much does a ticket cost? But the question, and I'm sure there'll be some moderation. These guys are in business, so they'll know how to still fill the stadium. You want to fill it, with fans, not just corporate. I mean, the thing about Super Bowls to me is it's great at home. You and I probably could argue who's been to more of them, but we've both been to a lot of them. It's really like a passive audience, because you got most of the people are not from the home teams, and the other half are from a company who just got tickets to the Super Bowl. Some of them are more interested in the halftime show. And what happens to the building and the feeling? One of the reasons I kept putting crews in stadiums at Telemundo is I want the announcers to smell the grass or the artificial turf or the hot dogs, not just from a studio downstairs calling it off a monitor. So, and then the last thing, and then I'll stop and throw it back to you, is who's going to buy these teams? And I worry about foreign investment and how that'll work. Or it's okay, you've unlocked the value. It's $9 billion. Josh Harris paid $6, but it's worth $5. I don't know, something about $6. Let's call it $6 billion, round numbers. And Daniel will have a great, our guest, Daniel Cohen, will join us soon. We'll have a great perspective on all this. But who buys it? I don't know.
Well, it hurts. Let's take the live thing a little bit. You have this, Middle East money come in. We're a capitalist society. Most people will remind us of that real quickly. But to my observation, they're not particularly flourishing. It's sort of an odd product, at least from my old eyes. The PGA Tour is a chocolate mess to some degree, trying to figure it all out. Their players are disgruntled. So it gets to the point, and the ratings have been down. So it sort of gets to the point. You brought in all this money. 5 guys got really rich, Rahm and Koepka and DeChambeau. But what did it really do for the brand? And so I think that's almost a perfect example of what could happen. And I posted something yesterday on LinkedIn, or maybe 2 days ago, and it's sort of like, sometimes I get accused of being a socialist, not a capitalist, because I reminded everybody the consumer is that we underwrite sports. And I think people don't connect that dot all the time, because at the end of the day, we're the ticket buyers, we're the licensing product buyers, we're the streaming rights buyers, we're the cable buyers. So all of this gets underwritten. So if you're NBC, if you're Peacock, if you're, the owners, trying to underwrite their investment, all the money ultimately is underwritten by us, the consumer, period. Yep. And if we check out, they're in a big trouble. Well, so there is an element that says, don't forget the consumer, because they're your underwriters.
Right. So I get that, and totally 100% agree. I think for a couple of minutes, so we have a lot of time for Daniel. It also goes to the upcharge in ticket pricing for people who want to go watch the Tennessee Volunteers play football, to your point. Like, what happens to that? I just think I said this a long time ago, and it goes back to Andy Warhol, who said something about everybody will have their 15 minutes of fame. At some point, every fan will have to pay to watch their team. Like, it's almost like getting to be pay-per-view. Like, You really have to pay a lot to view a game, unless your company sponsors the field or the sidelines and you get 100 tickets a game. So I just wonder about how elastic are the fans. The TV experience is pretty sweet, right? 60-inch HD TV, bathroom around the corner, fridge with free, well, not free, but you bought a pound of ham for $16, $12 instead of a sandwich for 20. So yeah, they say, I mean, basically the line is, if you want to have a championship team, you're going to have to pay for it. Really? Wow. I kind of thought I was paying for it, to your point about we're underwriting it already. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I'm just, and then because we have a great guest on we've sort of set this topic up great because we have a person who's living a lot of this with media rights and representing clients in this world. But you also learn. I think the biggest thing about executives is sometimes you have to tuck your ego in a little bit, and we all, as a very successful executive once said to me, "Hey, we're all type A that are successful. We all have egos, but some of us know how to manage it a little bit." But if you take Steve Cohen with the Mets, at first he probably was, "I've got this," and I'm speaking for a man I never met. But then he finally realized after 3 years, let me get someone in here who's been a general manager for a successful franchise, i.e. the Brewers, and let them do their work. And now they're likely going to make the playoffs. And so you have David Tepper, because none of these people ever had bosses, and they've always just done whatever they felt. David Tepper's learning the experience with the Panthers, which is, and Dan Snyder learned his lesson the hard way. Now, again, they all get rich. But now he no longer owns the Redskins because he just never brought people in. And I do Snyder, and so I can say this, very directly. He never brought people in that, would tell him, Dan, you're really wrong here, and we have to bring someone in.
Yep.
So it's about learning, hearing from people that have done it. And you don't, and the same thing with it. Carlos Brito did not want to hear from an executive at AB that had been successful and took a company from 22 to 50 market share. Didn't want to hear from. So it's a lesson learned. And there's a lot of topics all in there, but I think Dan straighten this out.
Ones. Yeah, no, there's a lot to go there. The thing I also want to talk about, I'm going to introduce Daniel now. So for those of you who don't know, and a lot of people do know Daniel Cohen, he's a really good guy. He's on an amazing trajectory. What I wanted to say was I just want to talk about how he got to where he got, which is kind of like, we talk about a lot of these guys who get to where they get and gals. So we're going to do a little bit of career journey. We want to do it fast because, we want to be aware of time. So Daniel is EVP at Octagon. He has started out in the finance world. He's a solid citizen, good guy. And Tony and I do have a no A ... policy. So the only people who you'll see on the show are people who we think are good, solid citizens. And so without further ado, Dan, come on in and say hi. Welcome, Daniel. Great to have you on the Wisdom Circle. Great to have you here today. Our friend and colleague, Tony Ponturo. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm in the circle.
You are.
You're making it a circle. Otherwise, it's two guys talking to each other.
You're making it a better circle.
Right.
I love it. Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Great to have you. So, we've talked quite a bit. I think it's a lot of good stuff going on in the industry, a lot of good stuff you're doing. I think I'd love to start just to kind of lay a foundation, a little bit, talk about yourself, your journey, and what you're working on. I know you've got a lot cooking, and you've taken Octagon to a great place. And please tell us more.
Sure, Ray. Thank you. Well, first thing I'm working on is the baby monitor right here, new 5-week-old.
Congrats.
So thank you, but I apologize. A little bit of a cold today. Bunch of little rugrats running around, daycare cold. So, okay, my journey. My journey is it is as unconventional as it gets, Ray, Tony, and I know that the three of us really believe a lot in helping educate and support that next generation of sports business folks that are going to take our job soon. And one of the things I always say to them when they ask is, what did you study in college to get to where you are? And what did you do? I didn't study anything related to what I did. I like to talk about the fact that it's really a lot of luck. Sports business, the entertainment industry, these high profile type A type of industries are built on luck, and underneath luck is a foundation. And the foundation that I've found has been hard work, some risk, and relationships. And that has underlined my entire career trajectory. I graduated out of college with 3 years under my belt, helping put an ownership group together, licking stamps, getting lunches, taking notes in Washington, D.C. City Council meetings with Mayor Tony Williams at the time, understanding how to move the Montreal Expos to Washington, D.C., the underbelly of sports there a bit, issues like RFK, asbestos issues, eminent domain issues, floating bonds, public bonds to facilitate a public-private build-out, a renovation of the stadium, not your traditional sponsorship ticket sales, baseball operations, media rights role. And that gave me the foundation of learning that there are so many entry points into the sports business world. Mm-hmm. And while I indulged in one too many boiled hot dogs because I couldn't afford any other dinner that wasn't free at the stadium, I learned a lot. And it was through there that the relationships that I was able to make have really lasted, my last 22 years that I've been in this business, and have helped me throughout.
No. That's a great foundation. It is also, I don't know, Tony, you've met as many, if not more people than me. Never heard someone who started out kind of in the civics department of a city council, and that entry point.
Well, so it was with the Male Excience ownership group, and one of my roles was to sit with the city council to feed back to Fred Malick and Jeff Zients and their ownership group what exactly the city was thinking. And at the time it was Events DC, run by a terrific guy named Mark Toohey. And what are we thinking about? How do we move a professional baseball team, not just from a city to a city, but a country to another country? And that was fascinating.
So tell me, sorry.
I was going to say, but it was relationships there that then led me to go jump over into finance, move back home to New York City, get a job at Bloomberg. And it was the relationships at Bloomberg that then blossomed into, hey, we're going to start a venture fund. We'd like to fund you and your friends this idea you have around building software solutions for Major League Baseball teams and broadcasters, and building on-air graphics and data visualizations. This was before there was an iPhone, an app store, before there was really right after the yellow first down line. I mean, it was really we were foraying into grounds that Chiron didn't know it could go to, and sponsorable assets on screen, and giving and unlocking revenue opportunities for RSNs and national broadcasters. And that startup that was co-funded by Bloomberg Ventures, IMG Ventures, and Major League Baseball Advanced Media was awesome. I flew all over the world. I moved to Asia, got to open up our offices in Japan and live in another country. Same for Latin America. And again, the relationships that you get to meet, the heads of media companies, owners of baseball teams, was something that I really prided myself on, in making sure that I could be trusted and that I'd work my tail off for them. And again, it's one thing to another. That's how I got to MP and Silva. We had a successful sale of Bloomberg Sports. The bankers, our sell-side bankers, introduced me to two gentlemen that were buying and selling almost $1 billion a year of media rights all over the world, but they were based in Asia and in Europe. And they said, hey, you want to start a sports agency for us in the Americas? I said, shoot, I don't know the first thing about starting a sports agency, but I'll call some friends. I'll ask some favors. I'll work my tail off. I'll lean on those relationships, and I'll take that big risk. I'll take that big jump. I can't tell you how many people said to me, you're going to go compete with Octagon and CAA and IMG and Wasserman and the others. I said, I'm young enough and dumb enough not to know any better. Here I go. And off we went. We did the biggest NFL international media rights deal. We bought rights for 43 markets. We did a deal with Major League Baseball for World Baseball Classic all over the world. We partnered with Paul Tagliabue and tried to launch we raised $150 million and pre-negotiated a deal with a major media network in the U.S. to launch a new soccer tournament during FIFAgate and try to clear the air of new transparency. So we got into original IP, negotiating and buying and selling media rights, launching digital products, selling sponsorships, the naming rights for the Verizon Center that became Capital One. So we took the existing company and we retrofitted it for the U.S. market and for the South American market. And sure enough, our owners sold the company for over $1 billion a few years later. And that's where I cut my teeth on the media rights side. So it was really just about like get in the room, take some risks, and ask questions. Say to folks, what I'm doing, help me out here, and it'll come full circle.
That's amazing. What was the name of that company, though? Before you went to Octagon, what was the company you started?
That was MP and Silva.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They had a huge business of buying rights all over, brokering rights all over the world, but not really anything of significance in North and South America. So we opened an office in Brazil. We opened an office, and I was shuttling all over I was doing day trips to Lima at one point, chasing down Peruvian Football Federation rights. And so it was an exciting time, and also it was peak cable. Mm-hmm. So it was right before the death rattle that we're experiencing now, and so it was an awesome time to get in and really take those chops that I learned on the finance side, how to put valuations and fundamental valuations against an asset. Instead of this being oil or pork bellies, these were media rights with DMAs, with pay TV household subscriptions, with penetration rates of broadband, and ways to figure out how to monetize advertising and all over the world. So as long as we had really good data, smart analysts, and relationships, we made a nice turnover every year.
Yeah, the great example there, Daniel, is, I think a lot of young people think there's a specific roadmap, that they're used to like the GBS thing. It's like, oh, I'm going from Ray's house to my house, and here's how you do it. And it doesn't really work that way in sports, or I think any business. So I like how you said that, which is you get in there and you roll up your sleeves. There's no job that's too small for you. Exactly. And everything you do, like when I used to advise students at Columbia University and say, everything you do is a foundation to who you're going to be, and it's an experience. It doesn't have to be in sports. Are you responsive? Are you a good team player? Can you be trusted? Everything you just said. So it's great that you said that, because you don't know, you would have never been able to map out your career that you just articulated, right? Until you got in it. And, the benefit of 20 years in the business, and for Ray and I, either good or sadly double that, is
sadly? Are you kidding?
No, I know. I'm just kidding. But you go back and you see how you got there, right? So now you can explain it as you just did, but you don't know when you're driving, figuratively, where it's going to end up. And you're still very young to me. You don't know where your next 20 years are going to go, probably. My guess is respectfully to Octagon, my guess is this isn't your last stop,
Part 2 of this podcast will be available next week. For more information, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com. Thank you.